This episode of Recording Studio Rockstars is brought to you by Atom Audio, Isotope, Native Instruments, and Grace Design. You're hearing my voice right now through the Grace Design M201 Mark II mic preamp into the Empirical Labs EL8X distressor mixed through Isotope, RX, Ozone, Neutron, and Nectar, all on Atom Audio monitors. Please check out our awesome sponsors using the links in the show notes. It's a great way to help support this show, and we really appreciate it. Now, get ready to rock.
I think humility is probably the hardest thing to teach somebody. The people that come out that are humble about what they know and the situation that they're in, just realizing that the opportunity I have, things I can learn from this guy are just unending almost, it seemed like. My advice to someone that's going to recording school is that no one cares if you make it in the music business besides you.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. Hey, rock stars. Yeah, you. I've got a secret to tell you. Want to know how I get a consistent sound mixing over 1,000 hours of recording studio rock stars? My secret is using Isotope, RX, Ozone, Neutron, Voice Enhancement Assistant, and Nectar to make sure every episode of this podcast sounds great. Right now, you are hearing RX breath control, declick, declip, DS, deplosive, voice denoise, ozone multiband compression, neutron EQ, VEA, and limiting, all from Isotope. Use the secret code ROCK10 to get 10% off or pick up the new Trash Light along with many of the other free cool plugins over at isotope.com. Are you struggling to make your mixes sound professional? If your tracks feel weak, distant, or lack punch and clarity, I've got the perfect solution. My free course, Mix Master Bundle. This course will teach you how to achieve pro-level mixes from your home studio using free and stock plugins in Pro Tools. But these techniques will work for you in any DAW, whether you use Logic, Cubase, PreSonus Studio One, Reaper, or another. If you're ready to make your best record ever, go to mixmasterbundle.com to get started now for free. Find the clickable link in the show notes of this episode. Howdy, Rockstars. It's your host, Lid Shaw, and welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Mark Martin, an engineer who worked at Masterphonics, Emerald, OceanWay 1, SAE, and the Workstation. He became vice president of marketing for all 38 SAE locations in 18 countries. And if you're not familiar with SAE, that is, actually, I forgot what it stands for.
School of Audio Engineering.
School of Audio Engineering. That's pretty straightforward.
Yep.
No confusion there. Mark moved to Austin to do live sound. Mark came back to Nashville to be VP of marketing at the Nashville Film Institute. So clearly knows something about recording and marketing.
A little bit.
And film and music and all those things. And a big shout out and a thank you to previous guest on the show, Michael Cronin, the great studio designer, for making our introduction. Please welcome Mark Martin to Recording Studio Rockstars. Mark, are you ready to rock?
Let's do it.
Well, welcome to the show, man. It's nice to meet you and nice to have you here at Podzilla Studios. Actually, I'm trying to come up with a name for the studio. So
we'll get one by the end of this. We'll get one for you.
A good suggestion recently was Pod Damn It.
Oh, that's actually really good.
Depends on who you're telling that to here in the Bible Belt. But anyway, it sort of had a ring to it for sure. Also sounds like a call to action for doing podcasts,
Somewhat.
Doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
So welcome to the studio,
Thank
man.
you.
Nice to have you here. And nice of Michael to make our introduction too. So tell us a little bit about your background and who you are. Like, give us the brief arc to getting interested in music,
Okay.
doing the studio thing, and then just, ending up in these multiple variations of where that led you.
Well, I was in a number of bands in college at Kansas University, and some of those bands just started doing pretty good, and we won the MTV Battle of the Bands. Pauly Shore was the host. It was kind of
Pauly Shore.
And I really liked the idea of just kind of trying to make a living, either playing, which I'm not very good, or I was doing a lot of live sound back then, so I thought I'd look at that as an avenue.
I think I met Pauly Shore when I was out for a hike in Hollywood on the top of the hills and the trails.
He's a very interesting character.
Seems like a place he'd show up.
Yeah. And at the time I was dating this girl whose dad was an air traffic controller who convinced me to take the air traffic controller test. I passed. I got offered a job when I was 22 years old in Kansas City as an air traffic controller. And I wanted to stick with the music, but my dad, of course, would not let that happen. So I did that for about 6 years and quit to go to the Conservatory of Recording Arts and Sciences in Phoenix, in Tempe.
Oh, right on, Crass.
Yeah. And some of y'all probably know Kevin Becca. He was one of my instructors, and my live sound guest instructor was Robert Scoville. And I got a lot of stuff out of that school and came to Nashville and interned at OceanWay with Sal Greco, and then moved over to Masterphonics, and Glenn Meadow hired me.
OceanWay, Nashville?
Yeah, Nashville.
So did it say OceanWay 1?
Not at the time, I don't think.
So I don't know, maybe that was just a typo in there, but OceanWay 1 would be LA, right?
I would think it would be, yeah.
Nashville is sort of like the second one?
Yeah.
Right?
Alan Sides built it,
Alan Sides.
obviously afterwards.
Yeah, so I never got to meet Alan Sides, but I remember the poster, the Alan Sides famous Mike Locker poster.
The mics were the whole OceanWay studio was just an amazing place.
Yeah,
and that's someone like Sal Greco as the chief engineer. It was unbelievable. It was a great place. I learned a lot, but I ended up getting a job over with Glenn Meadows at Masterphonics as a tech and setting up and tearing down sessions. And I always took the time to kind of see what the engineers were doing when I tore it down. I wanted to see what was in their signal chain, and learned quite a bit from a lot of that, and met a lot of people. And
what kind of sessions were you doing over with Glenn? Were those tracking and mixing?
Well, Glenn owned Masterphonics, right? So a lot of stuff I did was tracking, and then overdub setups and things like that. A lot of people were going through Studio 6 and the mix room, especially tearing down the mixes in the mix room. I really wanted to kind of see what they were doing, why do they have this on here?
Yeah.
And so I learned quite a bit from that job. And that was right at the end there. They had gone bankrupt and Emerald had taken over.
Yeah, I remember. Does Emerald Studios still exist on Music Row?
Not that I'm aware of.
That was a cool spot, too.
It was a great studio. Kerry Kopp was the chief engineer over there.
Beautiful big room, too.
There was a good combination with Emerald and Masterphonics, I think there was. When I first got there, Frank Wells was the chief engineer at Masterphonics, and he's gone on to a great career and doing journalism stuff. And
interesting.
It was a great group of people. And Lisa Roy
is Masterphonics now Addiction Studios? Is that where Cal Muskie set up shop?
I don't want to speak out of turn here, but I thought that
or am I mixing up my
Tommy
locations?
Dorsey had taken.
Tommy's great,
taking over the Masterphonics name.
I'm always I never spent a lot of time working on Music Row, so sometimes I get mixed up about which location is which over there.
Well, it was the one that's like 28 Music Circle North, or Music Square North, I think.
Yeah, SAE Institute on Music Row is like maybe a block from there.
It's the old Arista Records building.
Yeah, cool.
So Lisa Roy is the one that got me the job with Glenn, and then Lisa Roy was the one that got me the job at the Workstation. I worked underneath her husband, Chubba.
And what was the Workstation?
The Workstation was a partnership with Marty Williams, Mark Bright, Chubba Patosh, and then I believe John Guest was also one of the partners. And they had a nice Harrison Series 10 board up there.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that was a really cool board.
I got a chance to tour the Harrison factory when I was back in school, and then I've reconnected with them. Ben Loftus, just talking about their digital stuff, like the mix bus.
Just that whole digitally controlled analog is just, I think it's just such a great hybrid.
Yeah.
The stuff really sounded good. And worked there underneath those guys, trying to come up. And probably the biggest thing for me was the Dixie Chicks had come through there for overdubs, and John Guest mixed the album there, part of it at least. I know Chuck did some work on it also. But my wife was pregnant with twins. I had a 3-year-old daughter at the time. And just the amount of work that was coming in seemed to be slowing down with a lot of the prevalence of the record labels not giving up advances.
When was this? What was
this? Would have been 99,
99,
towards the end of
yeah.
99.
The label situation was really changing.
I was a little unsteady and unsure. So I'd actually, Lisa Roy again, God rest her soul. I mean, that was a great woman. She got me hooked up with SAE to come over there as the head studio teacher, teaching the equipment. And my twins were born 4 days after I started there. So I was given Scott Phillips from Masterphonics and had given me an offer of a studio engineer position at Emerald Masterphonics, or then the job at SAE. And I went ahead and went with that because it seemed like it was more secure. And I had no idea how much I loved the education side of it. You know, all these kids coming in just really hungry to learn everything that you can show them. And it was kind of like a high, because it was just every day I looked forward to going and teaching. And we had a lot of really good students in that, especially in those first classes.
And that's the same location that's on Music Row now?
Yeah, yes.
SAE? Yeah, so that's cool. So I reached out to a buddy and I asked my friend Kevin White over at SAE.
Yeah.
I said, what should I ask Mark? Man, he's coming in. He's SAE also. So I got a question from him. You want me to hit you with that?
Yeah.
He said I'd ask him if he worked under Tom Meisner. He was the founder of SAE, Australian billionaire and an eccentric dude. He bought Neve and Abbey Road Academy after he sold SAE.
Right.
So was that somebody that you worked with?
Yeah, actually, I worked with. He's the one that actually hired me to take over the Nashville school. I spent a lot of time in Australia with him, kind of learning how he wanted things done. And then I came back, ran the Nashville school, got all the staff up and going. And then I went down and I built the Miami school.
Right on. Wow.
And that was just a great location. Michael Cronin did that work also.
Oh, beautiful.
And it was just really beautiful and really functional. And I work for Tom now also, along with the Nashville Film Institute.
Oh, cool.
He's got a lot of music projects.
I don't know if I've met Tom yet.
He's been in and out of Nashville. He sold SAE in 2011, I believe, to Navitas, which is the company that I think runs it now. You know, I got out of the whole live sound thing in Austin and was a pretty high-end drone trainer, and I was traveling around and training militaries on using these laser drones.
Wow.
And, you know, Tom called me up and said, hey, I want you to come back and do some things for me. So, I mean, he flew me to his villa in Monaco, like one would do. And we talked about it. And
did he fly you on a drone? Did you say, no, I can fly myself there?
No,
just point a laser at it?
I don't think it'd quite reach 30 minutes of battery time. But no, he flew me over, and it was a great kind of reunion. I worked a lot with him back there whenever I was at SAE, and went out to build the LA school also. And I was really good, I think, at picking people that could fill the roles that needed to be filled, both on a business side, but there's a whole relationship that has to happen between the school and the student.
Yeah.
So the school provides the tools and the environment for a student to learn as much as they want to learn.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of really good graduates come out of there. Kent Hertz was a really great one. He's on tour right now with Alanis Morissette. He's Steve Miller's engineer now. He worked on Godsmack, worked for Sully at Spiral Studios for quite a while. And
does he have to get that hyper compression in Steve Miller's voice that we loved so much?
I can imagine he's doing a lot of that. They were looking at building.
He's like,
studio.
don't take my breaths out.
Yeah, Kim was a great guy. He did a bunch of work in Miami too with Missy Elliott and just the whole gamut. But he's an SAE graduate, and he took advantage of the situation that was there. He was there all the time. He was, you know, if there was an open studio time, he'd put his name on it and he'd be in there working. Yeah. And so a lot of these schools, some people might think that they're kind of churning out students, you know, and promising the greatest careers ever. And I don't think that they really do that. I think they have the environment for the right student to rise to the top and make a career. I went to the Conservatory of Recording Arts and Sciences, and I've had a, you know, almost 30-year career in the music industry, and made actually a pretty good career as far as I'm concerned. And it was because I went to a school like that, you know.
I've had great interns from Crass.
Yeah, this is a great place, yeah.
I was just out in, when I was in NAMM, you know, I got to connect with Colin.
Yeah.
And my buddy from growing up in Acton, Massachusetts, John Ellis, is now a professor at SAE. At Crass, and teaching SSL.
It was everything I needed. I'd done a lot of live sound, so I understood a number of things, but I didn't know why I was putting a compressor on a vocal. You know, I knew what I wanted to get out of it, but I didn't really know the reasons. And it answered so many questions that this really prepared me for what I was going to run into.
Yeah.
And you can't come out of a school like that as, you know, a mainstay engineer in like Nashville or whatever. You're not going to, first project's not going to be on an SSL. But they learn the signal flow, and so they experience the terminology, what's needed and how they should act. Are they a good hang?
Yeah.
All those important things that have to happen for you to get a decent career. And the music industry is huge. If you look at the audio world, how many jobs are mixing on an SSL? There's
not that many anymore,
no,
you know,
especially.
I mean, not in the same way. I mean, SSL, of course, is still thriving in a pretty cool way. I mean, they're really pivoting to give us the tools we need. And I always appreciate that because I use like some of the controllers for Pro Tools and all that. But, you know, I came down to Nashville from Boston at that time in 91 because I knew I wanted to learn how to do this recording thing. I'd seen a couple of studios. And I'm like, I want to learn how to do that. And I ended up at MTSU.
Oh, okay. That's a great school.
And yeah, but my takeaway from doing that.
Was Doug there at the time?
Doug was there. Doug Mitchell.
Yeah. He's awesome.
He was there, and Dan Pfeiffer, who I was lucky to have on the show just before he retired. He was my professor back then.
That's cool.
And you know, my takeaway from that was just doing the immersion in a group of other students that all wanted to do the same thing, and like building those peers. Was really, really valuable. The classes and the teaching was great, but it was definitely like I was gung-ho for it, you know. So
you
like,
have to be.
And I never gave that much of a shit about school before I hit that. And then all of a sudden it was like I couldn't get enough.
The same thing for me.
And it's such a great thing when you go to school. And so like I don't think I could have just gone and like coasted through classes and they were going to hand me anything, you know. Like they did help me find an internship, and that helped just by giving me, you know, like what were some possibilities. But I chased all that stuff down and always have ever since. And I probably was, you know, climbing uphill a little bit because I moved to Nashville and I didn't care about country music, you know. But I mean, greatest place in the world to be if you love and want to do country music.
Exactly.
I could have, you know, I could have been somebody.
Yeah, but it's so much different now. I see this every genre is here. I mean, and it's here embedded, it seems like. Yeah.
So it's cool to hear you talking about the school and the students and everything. I mean, one of the things I really appreciated about going to school was exactly what you said. It's like, you know, our final, well, not even a final exam. Our exam was, here's a blank sheet of paper. You need to fill in all the boxes for what this console does and what the signal flow is. You know, you need to identify which EQ curves belong to which microphones.
Nice.
I wish I had carried that with me. I had kind of dropped that as soon as I left.
But you did good on it at the time, right?
I did great on it.
Okay, because you're looking at that stuff. If you looked at it again,
if I looked at it now, I'd know what it meant.
Yeah.
But I don't actually like think about those charts when I pick a mic for a session or anything like that.
True.
But you learn to listen for things. You learn to understand things. It was nice to understand the fundamentals of how things worked so that when I went out into the real world of studios, my next job was to train myself. Well, what is it really like? How do you really use it? How does it work on a session? What does it sound like? You know? But at least like when I went to the knobs, I was not afraid of an attack and a release knob on a compressor because I understood, you know, fundamentally kind of what they did. What are some of the things that you see the students learning now? Do you see the students still? And I know you've shifted around to some different things. So maybe, you know, if your answer is it's been a minute since you were in the audio with the audio student. Do you, but maybe you're still aware of it all. Do you see the students having to learn, you know, like how to fill in the chart on an analog console, or is it more like fill in the chart on signal flow in a Pro Tools session?
Well, I think their approach is, at least in the realm that I'm in the film, because I was also the executive director of the International Academy of Film and Television in the Philippines. And it was the same kind of thing there. It's more of a, especially on the film side, I see a lot more hands-on, a lot less, you know, take this chart and what's the signal flow, or even when I was an air traffic controller, we had to have an air chart that we had to draw the lines and put everything where it's supposed to be. That's really great for you to memorize a certain thing, but just the usage of it seems to drive home the signal flow. And of course in film there's signal flow also. So, you know, just that whole using it, finding out why it doesn't work, make the mistakes, learn from the mistakes while you're in school. And those tools that you're building will really help you whenever you get out. So I don't see it so much as, charting out, the signal flow on a SSL 9000 or anything like that. I see it more actually in the hands-on, actually trying the different things. That was one of the big things about SAE and Tom Misner was, he started that in like 76 in Australia. And the whole purpose of it was the whole practical side of the education. They would have a class, they would learn a certain subject, like how to cut analog tape on a reel-to-reel.
Mm-hmm.
And then there would be labs where they could go down and do it over and over. And so where they could perfect what they learned in class. So it was kind of a practical and a theoretical kind of blend. And that really seemed to work really good. Gave our students, were helping each other in the labs. It just, that was probably some of my funnest times in music was working for Tom and SAE. I loved it.
No matter what style of music you create, Native Instruments provides you all the instruments you need, from drums, loops, and beats to vintage and modern synthesizers, realistic strings, guitar amps, and futuristic synth pads. I really enjoy recording real bands in my studio, but then adding amazing overdubs from Contact, Massive X, Super 8, Battery, Guitar Rig, or Hybrid keys. Use the code ROCK10 to get 10% off or get complete start for free today with a bundle of 2,000 sounds and 6 gigs of samples at nativeinstruments.com. Well, so one of the things that occurs to me as you're talking about learning in the studio yourself, working with students in audio, flying drones, learning with students in film, is what that parallel thread is through all those things. And I describe the greatest skill that you really learn in engineering a record is the skill of the workaround, which is like, basically this idea that you learn how everything works, but when you actually go and do a session, something's not going to work.
Right.
It doesn't ever all work.
Right.
So if you didn't know how to work your way through something and problem solve, you just simply never get through a session. You never get anything done.
You have to be able to look at the signal flow and literally in your mind follow it step by step, and just make sure. And I always compared it in my classes to like water pipes, right? You're going to follow where it goes. Like an auxiliary just lets the little water out. An insert diverts the whole path of the water pipe, and things like that. You have to. The troubleshooting aspect of learning things, I think, is important. That's why I think hands-on the equipment is what really made the difference to a lot of the students, because they got to, this didn't work, or that didn't work. So, they have to figure it out there. Most likely most students are going to come out and be first engineer or even assistant engineer on some big project.
Yeah.
But there's nobody that wants you to make it in the music business but you. So you have to take advantage of the school situation that you're in to get all the knowledge that you can. And then, like what I used to do, turn down mix sessions and things like that, I probably took 3 times as long as it should have. I'd stay late to get to do it, but I'd look and see, what kind of signal chain on Chubba's vocal mics on John Michael Montgomery or something like that, and learn that stuff from them. Yeah. And then first chance I had, I would try it out. And Glenn was always really good early on in my career to let us have a lot of time in the rooms on our own. So I remember being over at Alex the Great. My internship was actually at a place called Woodland Studios here in East Nashville. Maybe you knew Bob Solomon. Yeah. And I remember one time, I went back there and I was chatting with him while he was working on one of his projects and mixing, and he showed me parallel drum compression on the drums, and I'd never heard of it. They didn't even teach that in school back then. No, you got to try stuff though. It's all right there.
And I heard it and I was like, holy shit, that sounds enormous, And now, of course, it's like, you turn on YouTube and everything's parallel compression.
Yeah.
So it's everybody gets a chance to learn these things, which is cool. But like watching people work as an intern or as an assistant and hearing something cool come out of the speakers and then thinking, how did you get that sound, And then at first you blurt it out, then you learn, I can't blurt stuff out on a session.
No, you can't do that.
Not even compliments, And so then like you learn to like later either ask when it's asking time or like sneak over there and look. I always find one of the well, one of the things I did with my interns was their number one responsibility was recall photos. So like, which also, to my detriment means I've got a so-so collection of recall photos over the years of the sessions. But as an independent studio, it's one of the first things you kind of have to give up. It's like you're kind of always hustling for the client. So if you want recall photos, you either have to come back in off clock,
right,
and get them, or get your intern to collect them all for you.
Techs in the studio, they get good relationships with the assistant engineers, right? Because the artist is gone, the engineer and producer are gone, so the assistant's there, usually documenting a rig. And I remember people like Chris Davey and John Saylor and all these guys used those
Chris
old
Davey
Macs.
was a classmate of mine. At
Chris Davey was?
Yeah.
He
went on to open a bunch of the SAEs with you, right?
Yeah. I hired him into Miami.
I think I was playing banjo or guitar on his session in school or something like that when we had those school
sessions. That's very
sessions.
Cool. He's a great guy. He really is. I've caught back up to him since I'm back in town. I brought him in to manage Miami, and he was the perfect person for that position. And I think he built Atlanta and then Chicago after that. It's a great group of people from back then. But they had these cars. I forget what they were called, but these on their old Macs. I mean, we're talking the old Macs before OS 10 and all that stuff. Yeah. And they had these cars that had all the, for this compressor, that compressor had all the knobs on it, and you could just go make a mark where the knob is set at. So instead of taking pictures, they actually documented it digitally, and then you would print all that out and you would save it in the assistant folder.
Paper recall stuff. Yeah, doing recalls for sessions was such a pile of work.
And then when they have to recall one, the stress of just like, oh my god,
yeah.
They play it through and it's like, that's not right. Oh,
right. So. Rock stars, we'll try and describe what recalling a session meant back then. And it was often related to the mix.
Right.
Because the mix was the point. It's sort of funny. You think about the process of making music as a collective, right? So there's the songwriting, the pre-production, the production, the overdubs and everything. And then it gets to the mix. Mm-hmm. And everything in the creative process is a little bit chaotic, with some organization on the engineer and production side. But once you hit that mix, all of a sudden, it's like the label guys could walk into the room and start having a whole lot to say about things, right? Or the artist leaves and it's up to the mixer, and then the artist comes back. So because of that, it meant that some work could happen, but then everybody comments on it. Mm-hmm. And because these systems got created for, creating a recall on a mix so that it could be readjusted and tweaked and everything like that.
And brought back if they had to change something, 6 months from now.
Right.
You got to be able to get that same mix back up. And
but in context, great records were made before anybody could recall something 6 months later. But once we invented this system for doing it, everybody had used it. Now, of course, we're in the computer.
Had the total recall and stuff like that. But all that outboard gear wasn't a plug-in. You actually literally had to take a mark where the knob was sitting at.
Yeah.
And that's just some of those recalls just, had them that worked and had them that didn't.
Yeah, they had SSL would have the total recall and where you could actually recall each knob setting with the computer. Before that, people would also do things like take a Polaroid from above the console. Yep. You'd have to look at the photo to do it. And then you'd play the mix back, and then you'd flip into input or something like that, or flip, the switch to compare what you've got now on the board versus where you
go
left
back
off.
And forth,
and that's what you were describing. Yep. The engineer had to hear a perfect match, and if they didn't, they just get up and walk out of the room.
You're working
and say,
for a good engineer, he's going to hear a difference.
Yeah, exactly. I watched Tom Lord Alge do that when we were doing a recall at his studio, and I'd never seen anything like that before. And I was like, whoa.
I listened to that episode. It was a good episode.
He was great, man. It was, I was nervous. Having him on the podcast, it's like having the guy who was, the big guy that I was sitting next to, it was scary to have him back on, but it was great.
Yeah, it was great. It was a great one.
But, I watched him just hit that button between it, and he looks over it. I think his assistant was Femi back then, and he was like, that reverb's not the same. And then
they could tell.
You go and tweak it.
I remember we had an issue where we would do safeties for Jeff Balding on all those old Sony 3348 track digital machines. And, they were set up with MADI, right? And you transfer 50 channels of audio just through a coaxial cable. He could tell a difference between that and or he hooked up the separate D subs for the transfer. I mean, he could tell he didn't want any MADI transfers of any of the safeties because he could hear it different.
You could just hear that it had been digitized.
It was different.
Like that.
It was different. And wow, that's one of the times whenever I realized, man, I don't think I could be anybody like that, man. Because that's some ears. That's crazy.
Yeah. It's funny, we've got recalls now with Pro Tools and computers where you just pull it up and it's where you left. But the truth is, I'm not so sure because I don't know that anybody's trying to train their ears to make sure the recall is a match to the original. So, because that'd be a rare you'd have to like add extra steps to it.
Well, it's all ones and zeros. So if you save the configuration, it should be exactly the same.
Yeah, but that's the first mistake is trusting that the computer does everything perfect, just like you thought it was gonna, because it does come up with all kinds of weird differences and it's just fascinating. But okay, cool. So let's rewind a little bit. You were at these studio sessions. You were over at OceanWay, Masterphonics, the workshop. What are some of the things you remember about your experience with that in terms of just, being kind of like struck by, blown away by how something was done, how was something recorded? What were some fun stories or memories you have about the learning experience?
Well, the one thing that I learned, and I don't remember, I think this was at the tracking room. I just got to Masterphonics, and
the tracking room was that big.
That big, yeah. 8,500 square foot, beautiful SSL 9000J.
Yes, it's still there. Right?
Yeah, I thought they were closing it down.
I thought that
there was
20 years ago.
There was a going away party or something like that I was trying to come into town for, and but I guess somebody else owns it now. That's great. That needs to stay a studio. I don't see.
It was quite a construction job.
The coolest thing, and I got to,
if I recall, one of the mix rooms has a port in the floor behind the console that goes down for extended bass so that it's flat down to 20 hertz.
Tom Hidley, and Michael Cronin, of course, Tom Hidley designed it, and the control room sat on 3 hertz earthquake springs for skyscrapers or for tall buildings. So the only frequency that could travel through the ground up into the floor of the control room was 3 hertz and below.
Wow.
So they had these Kineshitas in there. It was an amazing sounding studio, and there's anything you're feeling is coming straight from those speakers because that's completely isolated. And the one thing that I did learn on a session there, and something makes me think it was a Sean Mullins session, and I don't know why that sticks in my head, but the mic and the guitar amp out of phase in the back of an open cabinet. I hadn't really, hadn't seen it and hadn't thought about it. But the difference in the sound that it makes, I don't think I've ever recorded anything that's distorted anyway or anything that's kind of thick without doing that. It's just having the control there to blend the two together. It's just amazing.
So maybe break that down a little more as far as what that, maybe describe how that is.
Okay, so you always put your 57 or whatever on the front of your amplifier. If you have an open back amp, you can also take another microphone and put it on the back side of it, and you run it out of phase. And then it really thickens up a distorted guitar. And I just love that trick. It's a great, I don't know, I use it every time I ever record a distorted guitar.
Yeah, so when you say out of phase, it's actually, you flip it so that it is in phase, really, right? Because the front of the speaker is moving in one direction.
The signal and the microphone are coming in the console out of phase.
Yeah.
But it's actually in phase. I see what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like the bottom and top of a snare drum because it's the front and back of a guitar cab. And then we're talking about an open guitar cab.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be an open cab.
If it was a closed back 412, you're just micing a piece of wood.
Exactly. I don't think that would work.
You probably hear something back there.
And then I think it was Jeff Balding who I really noticed that he was, listening to the stuff before he mic'd it. Now I know that they talked about that in school, and some of that stuff kind of just went over my head, but it just made so much sense. And then he would try different microphones on each thing, and then record all 3, and then come back and really putting a lot of effort into his tracking to get the sounds the way he wanted, and not do too much affecting on it going down the tape. And of course, back then there was a lot of tape.
Right.
Yeah, it was an older time.
But there's also that process of, there was a seriousness to making records about those kind of sessions. and there was a budget. When you have that serious intention, and when you've got a budget that allows you the time to, kind of methodically get things ready and right, those can be really beneficial. They can also be a trap, creative trap sometimes, where you just spend too much time working on things. But that's cool. I mean, like the front and the back guitar thing,
I just love it.
It's so great.
Yeah.
I've done that on some sessions, and then I've had that.
You don't always need it, but I like to track it.
But it's a cool sound, it's a cool sound, and then you can even pan those two mics, and now it's a cool stereo version.
Yeah, you can time align them even.
It's another reminder, rock stars, is like if you're doing a single guitar recording and you want that single guitar to be a little bit wider, maybe get out of the way of the vocals, panning the front and back mics like that, and flipping them out of phase. Again, we're saying flipping them out of phase, but that is actually flipping them into phase. Is
right.
What it is.
Right, exactly.
But that can be such a cool way to widen out the guitar.
I think phase is just one of the things I was trying to mess with the most, because I think the effects that you can get whenever you're manipulating your phase, I think, get some voices coming over here right next to your ear, and that kind of all kinds of weird stuff can happen. And I ended up going into the recording schools and sticking with that, because I'd realized that as far as an engineer goes, I would have I would be able to maybe feed my family, but that I wasn't going to be a Jeff Balding or Chuck Ainley, just physically. But the jobs that are out there, audio related, from manufacturers to even going on tour with the live outfit and all that, there's so much work out there for audio that everybody wants to be a major league pitcher, but not everybody can be the major league pitcher.
Right. Well, you can't have a whole team full of pitchers.
Exactly. So that's one thing I always,
every game.
That's why even in the film school, that's one of the things I tell the students is you may not be the big producer, but you can have a great career being a script writer or working for a gear rental company. Even, I mean, there's so many different options. I think people get kind of focused on, they want to be the next whoever. As a director or producer, when there's a whole career out there, so many support roles in this industry, it's not even funny.
Right, yeah. Atom Audio celebrates 25 years of designing industry-leading monitors in Berlin by unveiling the Arctic White A4V and A7V monitors, available for a limited time. With the XART ribbon tweeter design, customizable speaker voicings, and SonarWorks integration for room correction, these monitors deliver professional-grade sound perfect for Grammy-winning producers and home studios. Make your studio cooler than cool with the Arctic White A4V and A7V, available for a limited time with the standard extended 5-year warranty at atomaudio.com. And I've had a pleasure of participating in some of those for sure, a variety of them. I think when I got out of school, I had minored in electrical engineering too. And my internship at Woodland wasn't as an assistant. So I wasn't even allowed to sit in on the sessions, despite the fact that, Emmylou Harris was there making a record with Daniel Lanois in the other studio, these incredible sessions going down. I was allowed to, I was kind of nice because I was in the front lobby and you're allowed to talk in there.
Exactly.
And so the techs and the musicians are taking breaks and coming out and getting coffee. And I was able to hang out with these incredible
ask questions,
players and everything like that.
Yep.
So that was kind of cool. But the other part was just learning all that tech stuff. So one of the first gigs I had, I don't know if you remember Dennis LeCoeur, who had Tennessee Stage and Studio, I think was his downtown.
That's the company
place.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, it was like cabling and supplies and things like that. And I went and got a job from him wiring stuff. So that was like a side gig for me. Getting into the studio stuff was being able to. I could build cables. I could help install stuff.
You can earn money doing that, right? I mean,
I earned some money, and you just earn opportunity too. Really, like when you're starting. Earning money is great, but earning opportunity is worth a lot.
I remember wiring up patch bays and stuff for a number of different people that were installing studios in their house.
Yeah.
That's tedious. I mean, that's such tedious work.
And also you need eyeballs for
my gosh.
Stuff.
Yeah. At least a good thing I was young at the time, but, those are skills that are good to have because you never know what's going to be happening. Maybe you're not going to get a call for an assistant gig for 2 months. What are you going to do? So you have to diversify.
Yeah. So that I'm joking about that. Like you have to be able to see what you're doing. I used to be able to sit there and solder and I could see everything clearly. I go to do it now and I'm like, oh, this is hard. I get like my reading glasses are going on and off. I'm like, I need an extra magnifying glass. And you had mentioned something. You said that contacts that give you like a combination.
Yeah, multifocal.
So tell us about that. Because we've got a whole like, you know, group of rock stars listening to this who will appreciate, being able to see better.
So I've always worked in contacts, and as I got older, I was having to use reading glasses, and I'm not the most organized person. I'd lose them. I'd buy like 40 pair just so I have them laying around everywhere.
If I got 40 pair, I lose them. If I've only got one pair, I don't lose it. Okay. It's like the sunglasses.
So I went to the doctor one time and I was complaining about the reading glasses, and he mentioned there's multifocal contacts. So I have bifocal contacts. I can see right up to my face extremely close, and I can see far away, and it's the greatest thing ever.
Really? And so you never, so if you were soldering again today, you'd just be able to see what you're doing.
No problem.
Man, I'm going to need to check that out.
And then my wife uses this eye drops. I forget the name of them, but she's told me so many times.
Multifocal eye drops?
Well, they're eye drops, and they remove the need for your glasses. It's eye drops, and I don't know
what.
Truvia, I think they're called.
And so you mean they help you not need reading glasses?
It allows you to see up close.
So it's like it puts a little bit of an extra lens on the bottom of your eye.
It does something. I don't know what it does, and I'm not definitely not a sponsored spokesman.
Who would have thought we'd be talking about that on the podcast?
Yeah, but that stuff matters because I don't know, everybody's getting older. It's difficult.
It does, and we stare at computer screens so much,
Yep.
I'm looking at one right now. And I mean, I'm like constantly, reading glasses you see the older teacher or whatever who's looking over their glasses.
Right.
And then I become that person. I'm like, I understand why.
I'm telling you look like that person too right now.
Yeah, exactly. Got my reading glasses on, Rockstar, so I can see the computer for the next question, but I can look across the room at Mark without him. So share a memorable or like challenging moment for you when you were in these studio environments. Anything that was like a real learning experience?
I'll never forget this. I was in Studio 6, and it's before that's at Masterphonics, and before I started working a lot with Chubba, but I was assisting him on a gig, and something happened to the front end snare. He didn't like the beat of the snare, and he told me we got one of the early Pro Tools rigs set up there, and he's like, okay, make the beat do this, so I'm like, I can't. I'm trying to get it. I can't get it. I mean, I'm not going to waste any more time. I said, Chubba, I can't get this. And some people could appreciate this that may have worked with the man. And again, God rest his soul too. We were having spaghetti, and he threw a plate of spaghetti at me.
Wow.
In Studio 6. Because he was mad at me. So Chubba was
marinara.
There was a little bit of red on it, but he was a very passionate person. He had no time for idiocy. And even though all that kind of stuff happened with him, he still took me over to the workstation. And I learned a lot from that guy. That was an amazing man. He really was.
I came up in that era of you'd hear these stories of, the intensity of sessions and like, you might get yelled at in a session, or like,
it can happen.
You make a mistake and you never work in this town again, all that kind of stuff, And I think that was a spirit of how you would work that was included in like what you learned to do at that point on the one hand. But I also think there was probably it was a level of pressure that surrounded.
There was intensity. There was a lot of intensity.
There was intensity, but I think that accompanies the fact that there was money to be made in music at that time too. It's like, I'm sure if you're working on Wall Street, today, there's that level of intensity. Any job where there's, a lot at stake or whatever.
And the digital stuff came in, and it just it changed everything. Everything just died. I mean, it's just the feel of Music Row was bad. I mean, it was obviously cool. I mean, John Guest, when he's mixing a lot of that Dixie Chick stuff, he used the radar, and he did the mix through one of those ATRs with the 1-inch conversion. So he had really fat analog tracks, but he mixed through that to kind of make up for the radar stuff. But it was so easy. It was just so easy. Everything was just so easy. Random access, all that stuff was just so great. And it seems to happen in like 3 years where, instead of renting a tracking room for $2,000 a day, you could probably go spend about $2,000 and get a decent home studio, at home and do that kind of stuff. And I loved the way things were back then. And then the change that happened, I didn't like it as much anymore.
Yeah.
I just seemed to get rid of what used to be. Music Row used to be something awesome, but now it's all condos. I mean, I came back the first year driving through the area, and I'm like, what the hell? It's
very different, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just, I don't, it's different. I don't know. I'm not good about change, I guess. I didn't like it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an inevitable change in the world of
Sammy
art.
B's is gone. I mean, what are we supposed to do now?
There's an inevitable change, like a neighborhood, like all the artists, musicians move in because it's affordable, and then it becomes really cool, and then they get priced out, kind of thing. I think, that's really what happened in Music Row, because it's just that music itself, the industry started becoming a little more broke itself. I think
a lot of the producers, they were building studios at their house. I mean, they weren't getting they needed to do that to keep their own livelihood going, you know? Yeah. And so the studios were just, it's just a sad time.
Yeah. Well, so we had that change. Talk a little bit about working with these musicians, though, these session musicians, and what that was like. I mean,
it blew my mind. I was never really a country music fan either. I liked some of the older stuff maybe, but I was never a fan of necessarily the music. And just watching, my memory isn't the greatest anymore, but this one was again at the track room, and Brent Mason's in there, and they're doing a 2 or a 10 to 2 and a 6. So they're tracking like 3 tunes. And whoever was working with him at the moment said, okay, Brett, give us that signature lick. And he just wrote the signature lick for the song like instantly. I mean, it was like he just played around for a second and bam, there it is. And it's one of those songs that's an unbelievable hook right there that he wrote, and how easy it was for them. That's what blew me away. It's just them talking with the number system and them making changes and follow me and do this. And especially when you get, all those guys that have played together, all, those A session players, they played together so many times, and it's amazing to watch them work. I could find myself kind of paying attention to that more so than maybe some of my duties as an assistant or something,
Yeah.
And it blew me away. Those guys, that's a different level.
Yeah. Well, there's something to be said about that, house session band and people playing together every day on sessions and just over and over again. You just learn.
It's a lot different than they're doing a session with a band, that a band that plays together.
Right.
But to these guys, there's the utmost professionalism, the utmost, they get their gear brought in, it's all set up, ready for them to go. They walk in, literally plug in their guitar. The cartage back then was, I don't know if it is now still, but the cartage back then was amazing. And
what is cartage? Describe that to the rock stars.
So most of the A players and stuff would have, like Brent would have his dual 24 space racks and have his amps and everything in there. And it just stayed over at, whoever, SIR or Rock and Roll Rentals or whoever's doing the cartage. And they would bring it to the studio the night before. They would set it up. They had everything exactly the way that he wanted it, whatever that way is, wired up with the right amp, right head unit or whatever. And he would just walk in and play the next day. And when he was done, he'd just walk out, and they would come and they'd pack it all up and put it back in storage.
Yeah.
And
that was one of those first peripheral audio jobs you could get in Nashville.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, there's a lot of people. Rolf, I think, was one of the guys he's over at Blackbird now, I think. And there's all these kind of jobs that were out there. And, when I started at SAE, we really filled a lot of those roles with those students. And especially the first classes, they got the biggest benefit. I remember our first class had to carry the SSL. We had a 4000 E that we brought in. It wasn't EG, but brought in 4000 E, and they carried it, put it through the window of the studio. And so they got really kind of an exceptional.
No, that wasn't cartage setting up for
No, that was not cartage. That was not cartage. But that actually, I went and bought that console. I think I bought it in Paris, and I don't know, John Guest could have been mixing on it because there was cigar ashes throughout that thing. It was like you literally could lose part of your hand down in the bottom when you pulled the channels out. It was so bad, but it worked, and the students got a lot of fun out of it. I mean, training somebody in 9 months how to do a recording session on an SSL.
Is that the SSL that's at SAE now?
No, I thought that they changed that out. I know
there is an SSL over at SAE.
Right, but I think they got a 9,000 now.
Maybe, yeah.
I did take a tour through there. And I know they got rid of the Neve board that we had. We had a VR60, I think. And they've got something else in there now that I didn't recognize. So
yeah,
that's another thing. I've been out of it for a little bit. So,
well, those consoles are great, though. I mean, it's fun to work on them and learn them. And
I have a lot of friends. I got a great engineer back in Kansas City, a friend of mine, Robert Rebeck, who's was at Chapman Studios. They put a 4,000 in there, and that's one of the cool things that happened with a lot of the studios closing up. Is these boards were available to be, sent out to smaller markets, and so now,
yeah, he
did all the Tech 9 stuff on that SSL, and not everybody would have an SSL had things not changed,
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, working on consoles I love it. It's one of my favorites, but it's a particular workflow now. If you're going to work that way, it's a particular kind of session. It's a particular situation. Well, I did 15 years at the Bonnaroo Backstage Hay Bale studio. Cool. I ran that. And every time we went down, I brought a console set up with headphones, full band in the other room. And I would mix live on the console into headphones, and we'd just capture it. Behind me, we had brought a mastering engineer, and he'd capture it back there, and he'd listen in. We'd all listen in headphones in the control room.
Do you remember what headphones you listened to?
What's that?
Do you remember what headphones you used?
I really like the Beyer DT770s, and I wore those for a long time.
Were they pretty flat responding? Did you get?
Hell no, they weren't.
I was going to say,
flat.
Was it easy to listen and hear what you were going to get, or was it tainted?
It was easy enough, and what I did is I just trained myself. I didn't, without even thinking about it, I just got familiar with what things were, and again, like, you're not doing like, long form critical mix decisions. You're just quickly
it's something better than a board mix out front, right? It's just something better than
it sounded amazing, and plus we were bringing the mics in straight through the console and then mixing straight down to 2-track, so they didn't even get converted to multi-track digital before they got mixed.
Well, there you go.
So there's that purity of tone and sound right through a board. And that's why I say, like, that kind of live down to 2-track thing is a powerful way to record music, and it's a sound that, like, good luck trying to replicate that with some plugins in a Pro Tools session.
Although they're getting good, they're getting too good. I don't like it.
They are getting good.
That LX480,
but they still don't sound like that.
They still don't sound like a 480L, do they? I mean,
no, it's not that. It's not that detail. It's that never having been converted to digital. There's a purity of the sound. It's analog is what it is. It didn't even go to an analog tape machine. It's analog.
During all that digital stuff, people were getting rid of their Telefunkins and all these microphones for $800 or something like that.
Yeah, God.
And that's I think where Alan Sides got a lot of his microphones is he was smart enough to he picked all those up when it was so cheap, man. And then you got the 251s and some of these other mics that now they're just so outrageous. Yeah, because you got to warm it up. You can't just go digital anymore. You got to warm the stuff up.
That's true. Well, cool. So, what was I going to say about the? You were talking about recording with session musicians versus working with a band in the studio.
Right.
And there's 2 records that we put in your playlist too. You did a Chicks record.
Yeah, I worked on it. I didn't do the record.
Well, you worked on both. But I mean, like, you saw the difference between bringing in session musicians for something like the Chicks.
Right.
Of course they were playing. They're great players, but I think they probably had session players in on a
lot of them
on the record. Right. Versus a band like Godsmack, where it's the band playing. So talk a little bit about that. What did you notice between those differences? The
Godsmack thing was very interesting. Actually, one of my students from my first class at SAE, again, Ken Hertz, I mentioned, was working out there. And when I was at SAE as VP of marketing, so I did all kinds of stuff with NAMM and all that. And I was out there going to NAMM in Anaheim. And Kent called me up and said, "Are you out here? We need some prayers on the beginning of this record." So I was like, okay, not really understanding it. And so the Godsmack 4 starts out now with me doing a bunch of prayers, bless me, Father, for I've sinned. And the whole album starts off with that. So I got to actually do something on the other side of the glass for the first time. But I wasn't there during the sessions. That was just something that they brought me in to do.
Oh, okay. So that was like, I heard the voices on the beginning of the track. So that's you guys.
That's me. That's me giving prayers. And then there's a little kid that they fade across over to the kid saying the prayers. And I'm supposed to sound like Gandalf or something like that. They just,
well,
I've got kind of a low
like
voice.
Gandalf if Gandalf shaved.
Yeah, if Gandalf shaved and was very good looking.
Wearing a baseball cap. Right on. So is Godsmack also like a CCM kind of band, or no? Was that just more like a crossover between heavy sound and
Godsmack is pretty heavy? I mean, Sully was really talented. It's a pretty heavy band. I mean, they shared a studio complex with Korn. And
right, yeah. And no, I just didn't know if because there's so many bands that might do like anything from heavy music to hip hop.
Yeah, I mean,
also in the Christian world that will come.
They're pretty heavy. I mean, that whole Godsmack era, I love that band. They're good.
Well, somebody who's listening to this now is laughing at my question. So
well, did you say CCM? Is that what you said?
Yeah, like Christian contemporary music.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking you said. Yeah. No, that's not them.
Awesome. I am really impressed with Isotope Ozone. I've been mastering many of my records recently, and Ozone makes it so easy to get a fantastic sound. The built-in mastering assistant helps by analyzing the mix and suggesting all the settings needed for a professionally mastered result based on the genre and EQ curve of your choice. You can even reference a specific song if you want, using simple yet sophisticated modules like clarity, impact, low-end focus, stabilizer, imager, exciter, and spectral shaping, along with powerful dynamic EQ, compression, and limiting. You just adjust the settings to your taste and it sounds incredible. And the magic of master rebalance means you can manipulate the level of the vocal, bass, and drums even at the mastering stage. Amazing. My bandmates are pretty demanding, but now when I send off the masters for approval, they absolutely love the way our records sound thanks to Isotope. Use the code ROCK10 to get 10% off Ozone or other tools like RX and Voice Enhancement Assistant, or grab any of the cool free plugins like the new Trash Lite at isotope.com. What do songwriters, music producers, DJs, EDM artists, TV, and film composers all have in common with you and me? We all need amazing sounds that instantly elevate our music to the desired style. That's why Native Instruments is your ultimate toolkit, offering a massive library of sounds for your studio. Whether you're into hip-hop, indie pop, classic rock, meditation music, dance beats, or orchestral arrangements, the Native Instruments Complete Bundle has it all. From drums, loops, and beats to synths, realistic strings, vintage bass, guitars, and keys, it's a comprehensive collection. I love recording real bands in my studio, but then enhancing the tracks with drum samples, synths, and futuristic keys from battery, contact, Massive X, guitar rig, and hybrid keys, for example. It's a surefire way to make your productions sound modern and unique. Use the code ROCK10 to get 10% off, or get Complete Start for free today, featuring 2,000 sounds and 6 gigs of samples at nativeinstruments.com. Hey, Rockstars, we're back now for the jam session, aka the second half of the show. My guest today is Mark Martin, joining us here in Pod Dammit Studios.
Yeah, Poderific.
That might be the one.
Poderific, maybe?
Poderific, yeah. Well, one of the suggestions was Potty Time.
Yeah.
It sounds a little bit like a parenting show, though.
Well, I mean, you have the facilities.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the facility. That could be the name of it. I like 3 Hertz.
Oh, yeah.
That's a good one,
that's
too.
A good one.
2 Hertz.
Hertz so good.
Yeah, Hertz so good. Megahertz.
Yeah.
You ready to jam?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So, what would you say to aspiring engineers and even marketing professionals? Because, well, I don't want to get too off course, but I do think that if you want to be in the music biz these days, marketing is a good aspect to understand, especially if you want to be self-employed.
Right.
So what would you say for, audio recording and or even the live sound aspect, whatever? I mean, we're studio focused, but still, anybody who's thinking they want to make records, like you said, you gotta be able to pay that rent and put food on your plate long enough, or else you won't get a chance to make that record.
I think humility is probably the hardest thing to teach somebody, but it seems like the people that come out that are humble about what they know and the situation that they're in. I mean, I just go walk into the studio with Chubba, just realizing that the opportunity I have to, okay, yeah, I'm making some money, but more so the things I can learn from this guy are just unending almost, it seemed like. And so my advice to someone that's going to recording school is that no one cares if you make it in the music business besides you. So, and that's a sad truth. So I would say you have to take it under in your own hands and take advantage of every situation that you have. If you're interning at a studio or you're a tech and you're tearing down sessions, try to understand what the engineer was doing so you can try it out again yourself later. Humility, you didn't come out of recording school and you're not a recording engineer, so to speak, because you can, flip a fader or do whatever. You have so much left that has to be learned. I compare it to a mechanic school where you go to mechanic school, diesel mechanic school, and you're learning, what this is and what that is, and this intake and these glow plugs. And
we got one of those right down the street from me, the Nashville Auto Diesel College.
Yes, and that's a great career, by the way. But you don't learn everything while you're there. You learn how to turn wrenches. You know what this kind of wrench is. You know what that wrench is. You know what this component of an engine is. But you don't know how to. You're not going to learn probably how to troubleshoot it. What's this sound? What's coming? All that stuff you learn from the guy that you're working underneath. And it's the same kind of setup. Take advantage of every situation that you have and turn it into a learning situation if you can. That's pretty much my advice.
Okay. What about the changing landscape of the recording industry? So you saw it change from sort of a traditional big studio to something new. It's changed how many times since then,
It's just crazy.
It went into, along came streaming music. Then along came vinyl records again. Right. Then along comes whole new ways of setting up speakers. And now you're in the film world. So are you seeing also a convergence of immersive sound and things like
completely?
Atmos?
We just had B&H Photo come into our school today. They're a big camera and film resale. Everybody knows who they are, I'm sure.
It's like if you're in New York and you're anywhere near Madison Square Garden, crazy. Drop into B&H. It's a combination of Disney World and Santa's Workshop.
You may not walk out.
Audio.
You may not walk out. It's amazing. But we had them. They were in showing students new equipment and stuff. And the 5 cameras, about 2 or 3 of them were film. They're film cameras. And I just kind of realized at that moment, it's like, they were even, one of them was even like a Polaroid. And they're really pushing this kind of stuff. And the girl that was there only works with film. She doesn't work with digital in her pictures. And so I kind of see it's coming back from the digital to a little bit of the analog realm.
It's a bit like the audio world though, right? Mm-hmm. Because you've got, maybe film is having one of its experiences of, going digital and then, but maybe that happened a while ago, but it's like, the idea of like, we move forward with tech and you better pay attention. It's like Alan Sides, you got to keep your ear to the ground because when last generation's tech is not desired anymore, that's the time to scoop it up.
It seems like
it's the good stuff.
It's all cyclical almost like.
Yeah.
But to me at the same time, one thing I've learned since I've been at the film school is that both creative areas of audio and video, while they've always been coming together, everything's content now. People are creating content for Facebook or for whatever. It's no longer just audio and no longer just video. It's a combination of the two. Our sound to picture class really focuses on creating good audio for whatever content you're creating, because it's another sense, right? You've got vision and you've got your hearing, and it's all coming together in just content. It's almost like we're creating content creators more so than film industry people,
Yeah. And the nice thing about that in the world of content is there's audio in there, there's video in there, there's coding in there of some sort.
Everything.
You've learned how to copy and paste and embed code into a post, you know.
And the worlds to me are kind of coming together because most people, these kids these days especially, they don't want to just listen to a song, or some of them do, I'm sure they do. But it's all about the video now too. So now you've got to either, as an engineer, be able to work with the video side of things and work with people that are on that side, or you've got to figure it out yourself so you can be a full service person, you know, doing some 2-track recordings at a bar with the band. I mean, that stuff's happening everywhere now.
Yeah.
And then you want to even start bringing churches into the picture. I mean, all that kind of stuff, they're streaming that stuff out live. And
there's a whole industry.
All the way, all over the place. There's these industries that you're going to make a great career out of. And that's one thing I've thought that SAE did a good job of, was preparing students. Now, we had plenty of students that came out that didn't get a job, and maybe they want to blame us because we didn't hand it to them or whatever. But what the schools are good at, the film school also, is giving that foundational knowledge and then working with them to learn how to be a good hang and how to have people want you around and those kind of things. It's all tools for your tool belt. You have to have all that stuff to get into the right spot at the right time, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think you definitely got to want it and you got to go for it. What are some things that you see as opportunities for people out there in the convergence of audio and film? Well, I mean, I know you've got a lot of film focus at the moment.
At the moment, yeah, film is on my mind quite a bit now. Again, it's content. Anything with TikTok or Instagram or Facebook, there's so much marketing and advertising that's done in that realm that just need content people, fresh, hot content people. Who's got the coolest look, you know?
But so as an audio guy, where would you go? I mean, does that just mean start making better TikTok posts on your own, or does that mean go find a marketing company that's making that because they're going to need an audio person to help them make it?
Yeah, any marketing firm like that that's making these video stuff needs an audio person. And the better the audio person, the better the result of the content that gets created. Yeah. Same with the video side.
Yeah.
And so if you're someone that can do both, that gives you an advantage. But these people have audio people on staff. These people have video people on staff. They have just like a large film facility or whatever is going to have After Effects people that are specialized in After Effects and people that are specialized in editing and the more tools that you have. I mean, if I had a home studio and I was trying to work with some bands and I could offer them video content as well, I'm offering more services, so I'm in a better position. That's the way I see it.
Right. Okay. Well, so what are some of the when you think about some of the audio opportunities out there, just to sort of like in a wide spectrum of them, what are a variety of audio opportunities that come to?
Well, any kind of advertising agency. Okay. There's a lot of branding companies that are creating these image and brand focused videos and films. And then besides just with working with the video and stuff, you start looking at and I bring up churches because that is a very unknown for some people. The quality of the equipment that these churches have is unbelievable. Have an Avid board for the front of house, all this stuff. And and they're doing video, the camera operators, they've got, editors to edit stuff. They're streaming out stuff live. All those kind of tools and stuff, you learn a lot of them on the audio side and you learn a lot of them on the video side. But if you're able to cross over, you're just like basically doubling your chances of work, and not necessarily wanting a job that you're doing twice as much work, but having the capability just, it just opens doors for you, I think. And I think if you're smart enough to see that trend, that's the next 10 years, if you ask me. That's my opinion.
Yeah. I noticed you haven't mentioned gaming yet.
Well, gaming is a whole nother world. I mean, that's, I failed very badly going back to school to try to be a programmer for gaming. And, my brain stopped working the way it used to. But there's the sound effects and all that kind of stuff requires an audio person or a video person that knows how to do it. Mm-hmm. So the best of both worlds to me is I want the best in every position. I want best editor, best video person, best audio person. And, if you're a person that has all those tools in your tool belt, then you're a much bigger asset to somebody. And it opens up all these different opportunities for different positions that you can get in.
Yeah. Well, let me spin it back to the studio for a minute. So one of the things that I was suggesting is that if we want to work from our studios, our home studio, or we're trying to launch a pro studio, we need to really think like an entrepreneur too. We need to think about all the aspects of business and marketing in order to successfully do that. So what are some things that you have seen or that you would suggest to studio people that want to do the studio thing and they want to do self-employed that would help them with some of their marketing efforts or their,
Well, you got to have a reel. And that at least seems to be the bigger focus in the film industry to have a reel of your work. Then I guess it's the same in audio. A reel is basically, this is a compilation of work that I've done that I'm proud of, and this is what I can do for you. Right. And on the audio side, I never really saw that as much. I mean, it existed, but it's a very big thing on the film side. Yeah. So if I had a home studio and I was trying to work with different bands, I would want to be able to give them content that I've created and let them see, this is the level that I'm at, and this is what I'm able to do, and let me do this for you. Right. And so the best way to market, and I think in all of this creative side of things, is have an example of your work, somehow convey it to them. I mean, these days, I don't think people are handing out CDs or thumb drives or if it's just all being sent through Dropbox or whatever, but you have to present yourself and convince people you need to work with me because this is what I can do for you. Yeah. And that's the biggest thing. If you want somebody to get behind you and spend money, then you have to show them that what you're going to be able to do for their art. Yeah.
Atom Audio is celebrating 25 years of researching, developing, and manufacturing industry-leading monitoring solutions in Berlin. To mark this milestone, our friends at Atom Audio are unveiling a special limited edition series of monitors that will look stunning in your studio and sound as awesome as your music. Introducing the Arctic White A4V and A7V series. Available for a limited time to pro and home studio owners like yourself, the clean, glossy white finish exudes a luxurious feel and will stand out in any studio or home audio system. Featuring the XART accelerated ribbon tweeter design and customizable speaker voicings, the Arctic White A4V and A7V retain the full specifications of the original design. Plus, with SonarWorks integration for automated room correction, you can fine-tune your monitors to your control room's acoustics. Atom Audio's commitment to delivering professional-grade, high-fidelity sound to studios worldwide has made these monitors a perfect fit for Grammy-winning producers in both pro and home studios for a quarter of a century. Now you can bring that beautiful high-fidelity sound to your own productions and make your studio look as cool as your music sounds. Don't miss out on the limited edition Arctic White A4V and A7V monitors, available for a short time with the standard extended 5-year warranty at atomaudio.com. Well, I think an easy way to do that as an audio person is you just put together, depends on, if you want to use Spotify or if you want to use Apple Music or one of those. Playlist. Or even just a YouTube playlist. Yeah. You can put together a playlist of music that you've done. And even if it's, you don't have video content, YouTube works great for audio too, Yeah, exactly.
So just having that to where it's easy for other people to hear and it's easy for you to convey where that's at. So, so that they don't have to think about where can I go find this. Either you've got to send them the links, you've got to make it easy for them to see it. And you got to have an elevator pitch because a lot of these guys, you're not going to be able to talk to them for 5 minutes or anything. You got 10 or 15 or 20 seconds to where you're going to be able to convey this. This is what I do. This is what I have. This is what I can do for you. And get that pitch down and then just pitch everywhere you can. Yeah. Eventually you're going to find the people willing and then you can shine, I guess.
Well, it's funny you talk about the convergence of audio and video and how it'll open up opportunities. So when I was actually returning on a flight from NAM, I started chatting with a woman who worked with American Airlines.
Okay.
I think it was with American, yeah. And then she let me know. I was like, hey, what do you got? We were just randomly talking. I was like, oh, what do you guys got for opportunity? Like, how does a podcaster help? Because I told her what I did. And she was like, oh, then she sent me a job listing that was like director of production or something like that. And I was like, whoa, that's interesting. I'm curious, just out of curiosity. And I went and looked at it, and it turned out it was like very video production focused. It wasn't really about the audio, and the other stuff was in there, but it was really a video director. And I thought about that, and I was like, well, if I really knew all those tools, I probably could have considered grabbing that if I had wanted to.
If you ever look
Don't worry, rock stars, I'm not abandoning the podcast. I just thought it was fun to
if you
explore
look
that.
at your resume, and a good person looking for a job or looking for work can take a job description and tailor their resume to meet those needs that are on that job description. Right. And that's the easiest way to kind of move through there. So you have to do the same kind of thing in your music. I mean, if you think you can get more work, if you can, run Final Cut and edit some video and then fly your music underneath it, then do it.
That's what I did. I started teaching myself video for the studio because really what happened was, the emergence of YouTube, I started seeing other people doing these videos to accompany a live in the studio session. And I thought, that's really cool, you know? And it was, it paralleled what I was doing down at the Bonnaroo studio for that time. We did a couple of years with video crews. And then I thought, hey, why don't I just recreate this in my studio up here in Nashville as a studio promo? So we started running a whole series of sessions that I called stereo sessions, just a real simple name. And it was live performances in the studio. And then we'd shoot a video with it. And then, I'd use that to build and grow a YouTube channel. Right. And the intention was to build attention for the studio. Right. And it didn't take long for me to realize what a fucking pain in the ass video is. Yeah. So I tried to do it with some people I knew with good cameras, and all that happened was I was like, wow, that took what did it take us 3 months to finish one video for once, for a song or an artist. So I was like, well, that's not going to work. So then I thought, as iPhones got better and things like that, I was like, why can't we just use iPhones for this stuff?
There's the people that are doing it.
Well, that's what we did. So we started doing a thing where we would I would invite 6 bands in on a Monday night, and we'd go from 7 to 11, and it was like so I tried to be really compact with it because I saw how quickly we could work at Bonnaroo, and each band would get about 30 minutes to play 3 songs, and we just do a real fast sound check, and it's like ready, set, go, keep it real fresh, you know. And then my interns and I would set up our iPhones and we'd shoot video, and then we'd invite everybody else who was in the other bands who was waiting for their turn to also shoot video. And then so it became like, it's all our video. And so
you still got to sync that stuff up.
And then,
so what'd you do about
they turned it into me. And so 2 things we did. One was I was like, who cares if the video guy's in the shot? We want everybody to see that we're all here doing this together. So we avoided that obstacle. Okay. And so you can see people pointing their iPhone and capturing it. Cool. It made it fun, right? That's cool. And then you could also tell that there was a party going on because you'd see people there. And so we do it all like that. And then I'd collect all the videos, and I taught myself how to do Final Cut Pro because I needed to figure out a way to, first I think I used iMovie. Right. Yeah.
It was better back then. It was easier to edit with.
It was easier. And then I was like, all right, I want to level up. So I got Final Cut Pro and finally learned how to use it. And that's how I started teaching myself the video aspect. And then, I just get it down to where I was like, I think I was in an hour or 2 hours, I could edit 1 song video and get it done. Just got a whole system. And that's really the trick for doing the audio, doing the video, all of it. It's like you have to, if you want to crank out content, you got to come up with a system. You got to dial it in. It doesn't matter. It's like you said, I think you were saying this, but it's like it doesn't matter whose system it is. It's just got to be yours. Right. You just got to come up with your way of doing it and dial that in.
And you
stick
get the
to it.
clientele that work well in that system of working. And if you have areas that, you're not proficient in, there's probably a lot of video guys that maybe they got a little 1604 or something, even if people still have 1604s, I don't know. But little Mac keyboards. So, they've got that they're playing with, but they don't really understand it. They need to don't you have like an educational thing that you sell here as mix masters?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've made courses now too. So Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, we've got a drum course,
Okay.
Rockstars of Drums. We've got an Ultimate Mixing Masterclass I did with Craig Alvin, who's been on the show. I've got the Rockstars of Mastering, where I basically just mastered my record and did it with plugins, and then I made something simple to show off, how you can master your own music too.
If there are areas that you're lacking in audio, maybe that'd be a great way to go. I mean, maybe you're not the candidate for a 9-month course, but maybe you can polish your chops with something like that.
Yeah.
And so if you're a video guy and you don't have the audio stuff, then you could do that. There's other things like that with video. Also, we have, we have some summer courses and things like that for newbies to come and learn about the cinema. And so I think it comes down to the end result seems to change. 20 years ago, it was not, sound to picture wasn't, it existed, right? But we weren't building the content for the internet. So now the content requirements for the internet are just massive. There's a lot of jobs out there for this, and then a lot of opportunities, like we were saying, for you to build up your chops and maybe where you're lacking, and then build your tool set. Then I think the jobs are out there.
Yeah. And then what do you see as sort of like that convergence of video and audio stuff in terms of, you see these immersive sounds and these new audio formats? Talk a little bit about that. What are you aware of? And AI is a big topic now. Are you seeing that stuff cross your path, and are you seeing some opportunities?
Well, the AI stuff, crosses my path, but not in the film sense. I know that they're doing a lot of deep fakes, and a lot of that stuff is beyond me. I see AI as a tool.
That stuff's coming at us so fast.
It's so fast, and I think there's a lot of negative that can come from it, but there's a lot of positive it can too. So can you rephrase that question just a little bit?
Well, particularly in the Atmos and immersive sound thing. So to me, that's a real convergence of film industry and music industry in terms of like, it's a new form of tech.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like going from mono to stereo speakers.
And again, but that's going to be at your higher levels, because most people don't have an Atmos 941 room or whatever in their house. Chuck Ainley, I know, has one, but you're not going to have that. So being able to mix in that environment is going to be very difficult. Now the schools have them. We're putting one in. That mixed environment used to be, you mixed, your 5.1 and all that. So,
and back then those surround formats were kind of strictly for film.
Right. Strictly for film. But then some of the advent of some of these, like you say, immersive audio, the stuff's coming out. It's just sounds amazing. But if you don't have the setup, you're not going to recreate it. Right. So I don't have a 9.4 in my house, so what will sound really good on my little sound bar or whatever, but I don't even have the 5.1 setup that I used to have 20 years ago, where I had the JBLs in the corners and all that. Right. I just use the sound bar and it sounds great. Yeah. So the technology keeps coming around and changing all that stuff. I don't think you can do an Atmos mix on a sound bar.
No, but you reference on a sound bar for sure. I mean, they fold down to a sound bar and create this immersive experience.
It's just amazing to me, though, if you're mixing to an Atmos situation, or say you're just doing 5.1, right? And the mixing engineer has to have a 5.1 setup, right? To be able to mix that, accurately, right? And if he does that, maybe they can down mix it or whatever so that it sounds good on just stereo and it'll sound great and stuff. But if you don't have the 5.1 setup, you can't do it. So most engineers are not able to mix in immersive audio. That's right. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, what I've learned from the engineers that are mixing in Atmos is that it's pretty imperative to have the setup with the speakers so that you can do it properly. Because if you don't, it's not going to translate quite right. I think that there's I think it's totally fine and fun to learn how to explore that world by doing it in headphones.
Right.
And some of the tools like Apple Logic will let you do that now right out of the box. I was just, checking out Harrison Mixbus 32 has built-in Atmos with the binaural rendering right in it. Pro Tools, I think is about to do that or something like that, but I think it's otherwise.
I mean, that would change it, but it seems like, that higher end stuff is usually left to the higher end people that have the equipment.
And mixing and surround was always that way too.
Yeah.
But, so that's curious because, you got your ear to the ground in that film teaching world. So if you're not, if your takeaway isn't, it's coming, you can't avoid it, everybody needs to do it, end of story, then that's curious.
I don't feel that, I think that the school's set up where you can learn about it, understand how it works, understand, how you can do movement inside, with sounds and all of that. I think that's a great thing to learn. But how many people out there are mixing immersive audio in an Atmos, authorized whatever room? There can't be that many, right? I'm sure
there's not as many as that are mixing in stereo, but there are quite a lot.
So, but they have to have that equipment. So I guess if you can set up an Atmos room in your house or something like that, then you can go for it. Yeah,
you definitely can. Yeah. I mean, you can do it with affordable speakers as well, and a configuration. There's more to it because you have to do the interface and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, it's kind of like home studio, like how long was the dialogue in the pro studio world that home studios won't be able to catch up and they can only sound so good and they can't accomplish this, that, and the other thing.
That changed.
And then it just changes,
Yep.
It's almost like if you can think about it, it's coming.
Yeah. If it's not here already, you just haven't seen where to buy it yet.
Do you feel like all the time that you've spent watching YouTube videos, trying out mix tricks, and tweaking version after version of your mixes has gotten you nowhere? Have you been looking for a simple, straightforward, step-by-step process for creating a pro mix that won't take years to learn? What if you could have a Grammy-winning mix engineer who understood all of your mixing struggles and could coach you through them? If you struggle with any of these questions, then the Ultimate Mixing Masterclass is just for you. Now you can discover the proven step-by-step mix system from Grammy-winning mixer Craig Alvin for consistently creating a pro-quality mix from your home studio that will sound amazing everywhere. Listen to this quote from one of our students, David. Quote, "Absolutely the most informative and helpful block of information and mentoring on the mixing process I've ever been a part of. That was like sitting behind a mix engineer for years, watching and picking up tips along the way, condensed into a 6 to 7 hour session." Close quote. Look, I'm so confident that the Ultimate Mixing Masterclass will take your mixes to the next level, that if you can't get a killer mix within 30 days, I'll give you a full refund, no questions asked. So if you're ready to take your mixes to Grammy-winning quality, then go to ultimatemixingmasterclass.com and start now by checking out the free preview of the Ultimate Snare Mixing Trick, and I'll save a seat for you at the front row table at the Grammys. All right, well, so let me see here. Here's a question I never thought I'd ask. In what way is audio important in the world of drone piloting or drone photography?
Well, we're looking at starting an aerial cinematography program at NFI because of I've got over 1,000 hours flying drones and doing.
So you can fly the camera all
over the place. Stuff, so a couple of the drones that I have 2 remotes, one for the gimbal, and then the other one for the drone.
So two people flying.
2 people flying it and doing and those are Inspire 2s, and those are, maybe $6,000 or $7,000 for a drone that can record full frame raw.
Yeah,
it's half the stuff we see on TV has got a drone shot in it somewhere.
That's less than that Elam 251 mic.
Yeah,
we wanted to get for our studio, right?
Yeah, that would be cool. As far as the audio world, I don't know, but in the video world, there's so much that you have to know about to do good video work with a drone. You have to understand cameras, how they work, and the apertures, and all. To me, it's the same kind of stuff you have to know to do that correctly as you have to know to use a camera on the ground to do, a scene recording or something.
Right. But what about the audio? I mean, do you see audio being needed that's like sort of like a correct way of mixing a correct version of Foley that can accompany that kind of moving drone shot?
Well, anything you do with audio.
Or am I asking the wrong
Well, it's not a bad question, but the only thing you do with audio for a drone, a lot of them, the remote controller will have a microphone on it, so it can pick up some things. But you can't really do anything without the drone overpowering any kind of sound.
It's loud.
That's just loud.
Beast.
And if you put a microphone on there, it's even louder. I mean, I did a lot of VR360 video stuff with the drone, and that was really cool. But I still had to, bring music in, or, maybe some little sound effect of a drone flying by. But it's all post. I mean, there's nothing you can really do, nothing you're going to capture. Now that I think the police have some, crazy shotgun pattern microphones that might be able to pick up stuff that's on the ground.
Right. That's because, in other words, the noise is where the drone is. But if you can point a mic at something and pick it up a little further away, and
that exists. But as far as audio goes, nothing that I really know with the drones.
All right. Well, there you go. That's sort of. So I didn't know what the connection might be, but I thought it was worth asking. All right. Let me jump through, and we'll kind of hit some of our jam session questions here. We can go through these kind of quick. When you started out in the recording aspect, what do you think was holding you back at the beginning?
I was intimidated at first. I mean, I was in recording school. I interned at OceanWay. Oh my God, that place is amazing. Their monitor setups were just crazy amazing. Sal Greco, I mean, he was at Paisley Park before he came there. He's very, very smart person. And the gear was it was so much. It was so top notch that I was intimidated when I got there.
You're afraid to touch it, afraid to break.
Yeah, I mean, I was very happy with stacking cereal bowl or cereal boxes, smallest, largest, and cutting up strawberries. That's kind of what but I did meet Chubb over there the first time.
And who's that?
Chubb Patosh. It's the guy I came up underneath. He's a really good engineer in town. He was Lisa Roy's husband, and they both passed away in the last few years. And he just took me under his wing, and he's one of those guys that you just really, really want to do a good job for. And you'll do anything you can just to know that he's okay. And he's not going to say, "Oh, good job," and give you hugs, but you just know that you're okay. And that mattered. And then for him to take me over to the workstation after, I've worked with him a few times, that made me feel good, because then I was with him a lot, and so that was the intimidation of the equipment. And then I really wish I had a better technical understanding of electronics. With Frank Wells and John Saylor and H.G. Hollins were the technical staff over at Masterphonics. They're finding, capacitors that have gone bad and doing inline, testing and things like that, stuff that I just didn't know. And I wish I really would have known that, because I would have liked to have done more. But, some of that stuff is kind of hard to learn just by watching somebody, right?
Yeah. I mean, the tech side, I minored in electrical engineering, so I learned a lot of fundamental stuff when I was
a minor double E is a good double E also.
Yeah, exactly. But it was fun because I loved all that stuff. I wish I had done more of it when I got out of school, because I only just began to understand the world of analog circuitry. And man, is that shit fun.
I remember these guys were
sit around and build guitar pedals and mic pre's and all that stuff.
They were buying strips, like knee strips, and they were pulling out the pre's and everything and building their own boxes and putting the pre. I wanted to do that so bad. Really
I got to, when I was at Woodland, I got to help John McGriff, who was our tech there, recap the knee VR. So I was pulling out whole modules and sucking the capacitors at them, replacing them with new ones.
I hate to mess up on that side.
Yeah, you don't want to mess up on that. I found other ways to mess up while I was there, though. Don't worry about it.
They're always there. I agree.
How about some of the best advice you received? What do you remember anybody telling you that really stuck with you at that time?
Wow.
I mean, Chubb, also had some good advice.
It might be Alan Parsons.
Tell us some Alan Parsons
did at SAE. We did this really cool thing in the year 2000, I think. I just built the SAE school, and with the 38 schools around the world, we did a thing called the Platinum Panel, where we had a bunch of engineers and producers come to Miami, and we did a live stream in 2000 through an ISDN line to all 38 schools. They all stayed up at all hours so they could watch it live, and they were able to ask questions of the panelists through a chat room on AOL. So
Wow.
Yeah, that was way back.
Working hard with the tech there.
Yeah, but I think, and so Roger Nichols was there, Eric Schilling, Desmond Child, Alan Parsons, and DJ Muggs from Cypress Hill was there. And
those guys shared some good advice.
Well, what Alan said, well, he was talking about this thing that they used to do with the tape machine, right, for the tape delay. You know, two reel-to-reel machines, TX or whatever, side by side. They got the feeder reel would come off, go through the playhead, and go back to a microphone stand. They'd have a microphone stand, and it would go back and go through the record or the playback. It'd go through the record first, then playback, and then they would feed channel 1 into channel 2 audio, and then vice versa. And basically, you would adjust the amount of delay by pulling the microphone stand further away, so the tape would run around it. And he was also talking about one time where they used a ceiling fan motor, and they took wireless microphones and put them back to back to create kind of a inverted Leslie situation, because they could turn it on with the rheostat and it would spin as fast as they wanted and everything. And so the thing he told me is like, the thing that people don't do is try it.
Right. No,
he said when he was growing up, they would try stuff all the time. They'd be done with the session, and everybody wasn't ready to leave. They just would try stuff, and they try stuff all the time. And this was just in a conversation. He actually flew me and my wife out to his and Lisa's wedding, and the guy is amazing. The thing I liked about him most was he treated me like I was a colleague, right? You know, I mean, he's Alan Parsons, but he was one of the nice guys. But that's what he said. You got to try stuff.
Why would we know Alan Parsons?
Well, there's The Dark Side of the Moon. That was a little record he did, and the Alan Parsons Project, and he worked with the Beatles. Just he's a wealth of knowledge, and that stuck with me. And I actually took that over into the drone world too. As you know, you've got to try it. Don't be afraid to fly this $600,000 drone with this laser on the bottom of it. You know, maybe take the laser off first, so it's only $200,000. But you just got to try it, and the more you try, the more you learn. And that's what that was probably the best advice I got from anybody.
Yeah. There's so much fun stuff to try in the studio. One of the ones I still haven't done is stand on a stool above a guitar amp or a singer and dangle a microphone on a cable, and then just like spin it around them. Like almost like you're doing a little magic trick with like a watch on the end of a chain, you know, and create a Leslie effect that way. You know,
that's so cool.
To spin the microphone around the source.
Do it with a stereo mic too.
Do it with the stereo. Yeah, sure. Yeah, well, the stereo mic spinning in circles.
Yeah, maybe that might not work.
That might sound really cool.
Yeah, might. But that's the thing. Is just try it.
Yeah.
If you don't try it, you'll never know how many incredible things are done. Okay, Brendan O'Brien, I'm sure wasn't the first one, but you know, tunneling your kick drum, you know, on the outside, put your outside mic there, and then building a tunnel with a rug or something.
Yeah, to keep all that other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I'm sure so many other people did it, but he really popularized it. And then, and you know, if you try it, I mean, a lot of people do it that way now. And so you just have to try stuff.
How about a favorite hardware tool in the studio? Anything physical that you always like to have around on a session?
Oh man.
I mean, back then it was probably a pencil.
Yeah. You know? A lot of pencils back then, but
it was probably the menu, the 3-ring binder full of menu items.
One of my favorites, probably the LA2. I love that. And then, you know, not everybody had a Fairchild 670, but we had like 4 of them. So,
wow.
Yeah, that to me is almost like using a polish plug-in. You put anybody's voice through that, or maybe a low-end bass or something through that, and it changes the sound. It's incredible.
Yeah.
So those things were really cool pieces of gear, but you know, the distressors had just come out back then, and those are really great.
Yeah, I got to hang with Dave Durr at NAMM. He's such a cool cat.
Those things, everybody was starting to use those. Everybody was getting them. I really like those. And then, you know, just even if it, like a DVX 160 or something, you know, right. I guess that'd be my best tools.
Outboard gear.
I'm an outboard gear guy. I mean, I think plugins are great, and you can calculate whatever algorithm you want to, but at the end of the day, the audio going through that warmed up piece of equipment, you know, it just sounds so much better, I think.
This podcast is proud to present Recording Studio Rockstars Academy. Are you ready to take your recording, mixing, and mastering to the next level and make your best record ever? Then visit the Academy to find the course that's right for you. Want to record killer drums in your home studio? Then check out Rockstars of Drums to learn how to record, edit, and mix pro-sounding drums with a professional Nashville session drummer in a Grammy-winning studio. Or if you're ready to start mastering your own records at home, then check out Rockstars of Mastering, where I walk you through exactly how I master my own records using nothing but plugins. Plus, I take you into a world-class mastering studio, Sterling Sound, to meet with Ryan Smith and hear how he professionally mastered my record, Skadoosh, for release to streaming platforms. That's the music you hear on this podcast, Rockstars. And if mixing is your focus, then check out my free mixing course, Mix Master Bundle, where I show you how to mix using stock and free plugins and Pro Tools. Plus, you get a look at how I recorded everything in my studio and multi-track downloads for you to practice mixing and even upload to your website if you want. Are you ready to make your best record ever? Then go to recordingstudiorockstars.com/academy to get started now. Well, in the spirit of not throwing plugins under the bus, let's switch to software. What's your favorite software tool?
I remember
you really enjoy.
I remember working with Pro Tools. I think it was 2.8. I think it's what it was.
We're going back. This is the way back.
Yeah, I think
Pure
it was
machine there.
In school, I did like a Ren and Stimpy sound and picture thing.
Wow.
It was really,
right on.
Dating myself there on that. And you know, there was one piece of software that stopped existing that was like my favorite, and I used it with everything. It was Peak. Do you remember Peak, that 2-track? It was a 2-track like mastering software. It was the greatest. You could do. I loved that software, and then I guess it just disappeared. I still don't know what happened. I stopped doing as much audio stuff, and I went looking for it the other day, and it doesn't exist. And just even to have an older copy of that, I loved the EQs that were on it, and everything you could really master. That was my favorite piece of software, probably without a doubt.
Well, the interesting thing to hear you describe like old software is just the reminder that a lot of what we need to make a great sounding record was invented a while ago, you know? And like, you know, there's new stuff that's coming out that does amazing stuff, but also a lot of new stuff is just more bells and whistles and, you know, different colored bells and whistles and stuff like that, different shapes and sizes. But, you know, just a quality digital editor with a quality digital EQ is something that we've had available.
Yeah, but now
to
it's
us
just
for a
like
while,
you got some of all this other stuff, and they've got preset themes and all this other stuff. I just like how simple it was, and it seemed we actually brought it into SAE quite a bit. I think Tom Isra was actually the one that pushed for us to use that, but I started using it. I love it. Yeah.
Well, and so part of the message there to you rock stars is, you know, because we're all grappling with like, man, should I get the new thing? Should I get the new computer? Should I upgrade? Should I get this other plugin? And if you want to, go for it, but you don't have to. You know, you can, you know, I've sort of refused to throw away my old Pro Tools TDM system. It's it's still sitting on, it's taken up my couch in my bedroom because I can't bring myself to just
I know
put
people
it in the
that
trash
like wait, they wait and wait and do not want to upgrade, you know, and you know, some of the upgrades happen where you had to change hardware and all that kind of stuff. It's like, you know, they had the old beige Max, what is it, 78 or whatever they were. I don't remember. And they would just keep using those instead of upgrading.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, you know, I was making the record that made me the most, you know, netted me the largest check from a record label was done on that old Pro Tools system with the 88824. So, you know, I'm like, sometimes I look at it, I'm like, well, which one's the good one to use?
I mean, it still works, right?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I have to run it on an old computer if I wanted to run it. So, but still, my point is that like, you know, it didn't have latency. You know, it was a TDM system. So I could record a live band, and you could go through it and it sounded great. And, you know, it's got a tone to it like those old 888. So there's a mid-range presence that made those recordings sound pretty cool. You know, I mean, the stuff that we use now sounds amazing too, but it's also just different, you know? So it's just, it's good to be reminded of that.
The one thing that in that platinum panel thing that we did at SAE, Roger Nichols was bringing up that guy, he was a nuclear engineer, I guess. And Lived next door to Frank Zappa.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, when they were growing up together, they were trying all kinds of safe stuff. That was great. Listen to him talk was incredible. But he was talking about, digital audio and his 8-bit converters he used on all the Steely Dan drums.
Wow.
8-bit converters. You would think that, oh my God, I kind of have 16-bit or whatever, these days. I don't even know what they're at, 96 or 500. I don't know. But the sound of those drums, you can't beat those drums. I mean, those sound incredible. And they were done with basically a homemade 8-bit converter, A to D converter.
Wow. Fascinating.
And so you're right. Sometimes the latest and greatest isn't the best, but you have to be good enough to know what is good from back then.
Well, or just remember that, if you're using good stuff that's older, you can make a great record.
Right.
Otherwise we wouldn't have had great records to inspire us to make us records today.
Right. We're older and we could probably make a great record.
I'm ready to do it. That's why I'm doing this podcast. All right. How about a resource for the business side of doing this? What, or advice, whether it's some cool tool or just some tip for, making records for, a living rather than just a hobby.
So if you're trying to get to a commercial facility, I can give you a situation from the drone world. I started a new job, and there was this kid that had come in and drop off his resume. Didn't have tons of experience, but really wanted to work in the drone world. And we didn't need him at the time, so I let him go on. Well, he went to work for another company that I used to work for that manufactured the stuff. And he turned out to be unbelievable. But the reason why he got that job is because he came in and dropped off his resume. A week later, he came back with another resume, said, I don't know if anybody saw it, but I'd like to leave another one. And he came back not so close together that it was annoying, but he showed determination to get the opportunity to come in and he wanted to learn. It wasn't just, let me come work for you. He's like, let me come work for you and learn. And he got hired and he's having a great career right now. And I think it's the same thing, in audio. If you want to get to a bigger existing market, ask him if you can come intern. I mean, I worked for 3 months for free at OceanWay.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't make anything. And I didn't care because I was learning. And so it's that same old kind of adage. If there's a certain area that you want to work in with a group of people, you do what you can to be around them and be a part of it. So either you bug them or you work out your style of how you're going to get to work with them and you just keep going. As far as the business side of it, these days with all the content that's out there, you've got to have a killer reel. Especially if you got video going on.
Yeah.
You need to have something flashy that sells yourself.
Yeah, that's what you were mentioning. That's a good tip. Okay, here's another one. Organizational side. What organizational tips do you have for the rock stars? How do we keep our shit together as we do all
I'm the
these
wrong
things?
person to ask that question. I'm serious. I'm not very organized at all. That's one of my biggest downfalls.
Is the answer you find somebody who's good at being organized?
I have an assistant. I have an assistant.
Yeah.
That's just what I'm going to say.
Right.
That takes care of some of that.
All right. I appreciate it. When there's been many times where I've been in the studio and I've worked with an intern or an assistant who is organized, and it's amazing.
The difference is amazing. And it actually makes you more organized because I want to make sure I tell them, all the details I need to tell them so that they can help me meet whatever appointment or whatever I have going on. And night and day difference.
All right, so here's our closing question. This one is hypothetical, and we're taking the Wayback Studio machine. And you get to go back in time and find young Mark who's thinking about making music. Oh, I didn't ask you what your instrument was.
I'm a guitar player.
Guitar player first? All right, cool. So you're rocking on the guitar and you're thinking, man, I want to make some records or whatever. And so you go back and you say, listen, buddy, here's the single most important thing you need to know to be a rock star of the studio yourself one day. What advice would you go back and give yourself if you could?
That you're probably better than you think you are, and give yourself some credit because it took a long time to get here. So give yourself credit. Don't be so hard on yourself because I probably could have kept going further and further and not gone with the SAE and all of that route. Give yourself more credit. That's my advice to myself.
Okay, fair enough. Right. So
and you are very good looking. Just don't forget.
You are?
I am, not you. I was talking about first person.
Hey, I got a first date after this interview.
I'm impressed.
Yeah, we'll see.
Is that your first one or a first date?
It's a first date.
Okay, congratulations.
Not my first. Yeah, I've been saving myself till I was 56.
Yeah, well, I got 30 years of marriage, and I don't know if you're in better shape or not.
Cool, man. Well, so thank you for joining us on the podcast, Mike.
Yeah.
It was great to meet you, and it's fun to hear these old stories and reminisce about times on Music Row and all that too. Let the rock stars know where can they find you online if they got more questions for you, or if you want them to go learn more about audio, filmmaking, drone flying, any of it.
You could give me at mark.martin@nfi.edu. That's the Nashville Film Institute.
All right, cool, man. Rockstars, thanks for listening. Mark, we'll see you around the studio, man. Maybe I'll have you teach me how to fly a drone one of these days.
Anytime. I can do that stuff.
I'll have to, you know what? It's funny because we were talking about making our videos down there, and I wanted to have a cool intro for it. And so I got my daughter one of those cheap early drones that had a little built-in camera on it. And then I did some flyby shots of the studio, and that was my opening sequence for
That's a great thing.
Each video.
You know, I didn't think I was ever going to be an incredible engineer, but I'm an incredible drone operator. So if you ever need any of that stuff, I got you.
All right, cool. And Rockstars, maybe I'll include a link to the stereo sessions in the show notes for this one, so you can check that out if you want to. Dude, we'll see you around the studio.
All right. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, then please share this episode with your friends on social media and leave a rating and review on iTunes to help the podcast reach more rock stars like yourself. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to rsrockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And remember to hit the subscribe button to keep up with weekly episodes. And if you're ready to make your best record ever now, then head over to Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can start with my free course at mixmasterbundle.com. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks for being a rock star. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music. Recording Studio Rockstars would like to give a big thank you to our awesome sponsors who help make this episode possible: Grace Design, Atom Audio, Native Instruments, and Isotope. And remember, at isotope.com and nativeinstruments.com, use the coupon code ROCK10 for 10% off any plug-in purchase. If you enjoyed Recording Studio Rockstars, please check out our sponsors using the links in our show notes, because it's a great way to help support this show. These are all things I highly recommend for your studio. They're gonna help you make your best record ever. I would also like to thank our fantastic team here at Recording Studio Rockstars: Vlad Weselchenko, Braden Stremming, and Liz Hulitskaya. Thanks so much for listening, Rockstars, and we'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.